Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me today. I'm Stephen Rogers, Executive Director of the Association of the United States Navy. And with me today is another very special guest, a a member of the United States Navy, loves the Navy. I can tell you that. You'll be able to read that right away by his passion. Jon Altmann's with us. Jon, could you please share with us briefly your Navy career, which I was very, very impressed by, and what we're doing now in relation to a topic that has been discussed even at the kitchen tables of many people, and that is recruiting. It seems like we're having some challenges there. But let's first start with your background. Let our members know who you are and what you've been doing lately.
I'm Jon Altmann. I'm a past National Vice President with AUSN. I'm a retired Senior Chief Intelligence Specialist. I put in a little bit more than 22 years active in reserve time. I served four tours on the SecNav's Navy Marine Corps Retirement Council. And these days that I'm teaching high school, teaching AP US history and American government in Phoenix, Arizona. So my background in Navy intel, I had a great career. In that half of it was spent doing intel for Navy special warfare types, and had a good time with it. My last assignment before I retired in '06 was on the National Command Staff of the Navy Intelligence Reserve Command as the Senior Enlisted Advisor, Readiness and Training. So I've always told people that if Bin Laden could have been taken out with paper clips, I'm your guy.
Hey, listen, I'm looking at you and I'm saying, boy, this guy looks like a football coach. Uh, so,
It. I wish I was that good. Yes.
well, look at you and I have, we have something in common, Navy Intel. Did that, I went through the LDO program and pleasure to meet you and to share this period of time with you. Jon, let's get right to the core of a problem that we want to help. We, the AUSN, want to help the Navy overcome, and that's Navy recruiting. We've seen over the past few years, and look at we weigh in on a lot of stuff and we speak our mind, and I know you do, but there seems to have been a lowering of standards, physical standards, mental standards, etc., just to get people into the Navy. Now, is that true, or is that false, or is that partly true, partly false? And from your view, if it is true, how do we reverse it? How do we bring it back to a time when people have to meet a certain standard like you and I did when we joined the Navy?
I don't detect that we've lowered the standards, and I can say that from experience. Because now in my ninth year of teaching high school, I have a fair amount of time of letting Navy recruiters and other branch service branch recruiters in my classroom, talking to my students. I teach juniors and seniors in high school, so that's the ideal age group for the recruiter to be talking to. The juniors, because particularly as they get to the end of their junior year, they have to start thinking about what am I going to do after high school, who's going to pay for college, serious little questions like that. I am privileged this year that two of my seniors have raised their hand and
Go ahead, Jon. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and again, two of my students have already raised their hand and as delayed enlistees into the Navy. One's going into aircraft structural mechanics, and the other one is going to be an engineman and wants to take the SEAL test. Um, I've over the years, I have one of my former students out there in her junior year at Texas A&M on a 4-year Navy ROTC scholarship, um, planning to be a submariner. So with all these three that I can talk about, and others I've been working with recruiters on and trying to help them find candidates, I don't think we've lowered the standards. I'm reminded of a phone call three some years ago when one of my students did land the Navy ROTC scholarship. And a simple question says, Senior Chief, you got any more like her? And I said, well, you're a little short in the recruiting goal. And she says, yes. In the 4-state area, they had 50 ROTC scholarships to give away and only had 4 qualified candidates. And I said, well, what's causing the problem due to, in addition to lack of interest? The challenge recruiting says, well, it's either that their academics aren't strong enough for an ROTC scholarship, they're physically out of shape, which that's something that they can work on, or they've had some contacts with law enforcement or substance abuse that are not waiverable at this point. So those are the three challenges out there. The most frequent that I read about is that students are not physically qualified. We're eating too well and not exercising enough. As far as compromising the standards, I mean the youngsters I've worked with have gone into officer programs, have gone into being enlisted, all well qualified. We weren't lowering the bar for any of them. It's that we were getting good kids in. The question is, do we have enough interest out there? The challenge, and I've heard this in years gone by, it as a teacher, you do it a couple of times a year, you do the parent teacher night, and parents would come in of my students and, just to check in, how's their kid doing academically? And of course, they're complimentary. Well, thank you, Mr. Altman, for your service to the military and that. And then they casually mention, I'm not sure I'd really want my son or daughter in the military. Or I'd rather just pay for their college rather than have them, go in the military to get their college. And of course, I have to bite my lower lip when I'm told that a little bit. And of course, I kind of wonder and say, well, gosh, okay, so it's okay for this Navy senior chief to have deployed on orders, but it's not okay for your kid who turns 18, makes their own choices. You don't want them in the service. So that's some of the other piece out there is that we don't have parents that have served. You'd have to go back to the grandparents. There's not as many of us that have worn the cloth of our nation to share that experience down. I know that I have a 22-year-old that's in graduate school, looking forward to joining one of the services once he gets his master's and takes his national boards and working in healthcare. And but he'll be the fourth generation in the family.
John, you mentioned you're a teacher, and one of the issues that I believe we have to work on, maybe as a country, but again, the AUSN is going to be reaching out to school boards and parent-teacher organizations through some of our outreach programs, is to teach in high school, at least high school, military history. And in this case, I would love to see part of it, the Navy, and all the good our military has done, all the good our Navy has done over the years in the defense of freedom and liberty. So the lack of education in our schools may have a lot to do with the lack of interest in joining the military. And what do you say about that?
Yeah, I'd say, well, I'm in Arizona, and in Arizona we're a pretty patriotic state. We have two U.S. senators that have both been in combat, and when we start looking around at some other folks that are in elected office and we have quite a few folks there that have, if they've done one or two enlistments, or if there are some have done a career. And whatever state you're in, a state has a state curriculum they adopt, and they adopt it in social studies and or history. Arizona, it's a standard curriculum for us. We do talk about periods of history that, and so we hit the Civil War, we hit the Spanish-American War, we hit Vietnam, and then where we're probably light on is because as you close out the academic year, you get to the end, what's the current situation in the world? What was the Cold War about? Did we win it? Is it still on? So those are some of the things. What I try to do as an educator is I try to incorporate those pieces in there that have some positives that address the cultural as well as the military history. For instance, in Arizona, we have a gentleman that many years ago advocated on behalf of farm workers and unionizing them, Cesar Chavez. But very few people know that Cesar Chavez served in the United States Navy. Cesar Chavez enlisted in the Navy, and we have named a supply ship after him. So those are some of the little things you look around and say, who in my state has a name for themselves as a result of their service? Did we name a ship after them? Is there some award or something? So as an educator, I look for those opportunities. A lot of educators, the younger educators today, and I can say that because I'm an old guy at 70, a lot of the younger educators may not have the background because mom or dad were not in the military. They will follow the state curriculum or their school district curriculum, if you want to add something more to that, then what you do is you'll outreach to your local school board and say, hey, I have a military career of my own. I think it might be valuable, to share or something. That is there an opportunity for me to come into a classroom? Would any of your teachers be interested in that? I think there's always that. Last year, I brought in a fellow I've known for a long time, Green Beret combat veteran in Vietnam. It has quite a story to talk about it. Have another guy that retired two-star Army infantry, started out his Army career leading a recon platoon in Vietnam. So those stories are out there. I think people are willing to come in the classroom and do that, and then
Well, let's let
that
let's
that's
John, let's talk about. You just said something interesting that people are willing to come in and talk about it. But here on the East Coast, we've had problems where schools are not willing to allow even recruiters near the schools, let alone to come in to speak to the students. Now, hopefully, over a period of time, we're going to be able to change that attitude towards the military. But I think one of the challenges we have, and again, the AUSN is trying to meet the challenge in a good way, in a positive way, is to ensure that we could at least have recruiters come into the schools and talk to these kids. And I mention that because the Navy, look, a couple admirals reached out to me over the past few months. Somehow they connected to the fleet. And they're saying, look, we're building great ships. We have a powerful Navy, but our problem is what you just articulated before. We can't get the skilled people interested in joining. We're talking about the plumbers, the electricians, whatever, the nuts and bolts people that are really letting the fleet operate. And the reason why we don't seem to have that is because no one is going into these tech schools. We are, by the way, the AUSN is working on us, if not recruiters, at least we could get in, and we'll be able to share what the importance of their skills are to the defense of the country. So we're working on that, and now I'm hearing from you. I guess you live in a district where it's okay for recruiters to go in.
I've worked in three. I'm in my third district in terms of over time. I've changed due to getting a better deal. But in all three, I think Mom Apple Pie and Wave the Flag were important. We're also too in Arizona by tradition. We got a large military presence in Arizona. We have 5 military bases here. A lot of history. We have a very I say it's a red state. It was sometimes we're purple, but I think we're fairly red when it comes to military and veterans. But there's one way that we can change that. You can sit down with your state legislatures and legislators and tell them you'd want in state law, under educational law, that the school districts have to open their doors to military recruiters once or twice a year.
Hmm.
You can put that into state law, and then a local school district board has no choice but to say, okay, when the Army recruiter or the Navy recruiter shows up, or if they call to get in, you got to allow them access.
Boy,
Even if access might be a
did,
table at
did,
lunchtime.
did you just plant an idea in my head? We
Yeah,
have a new legislative corps here at the AUSN, and we have our members who are assigned to that corps, and they're all volunteers, by the way. Great. We have great membership stepping up who are interacting with their state legislators as well as their federal legislators. So I think that's something that, well, I don't think so. I know that's something we'll pursue now. You see, just by having this conversation with you, what an idea, because they do control the purse strings of these schools. And I would believe that there are a lot of veterans on our state legislatures who will be for that. So that's a great idea.
and I mean that's something to tie it in. I mean, every state has some type of superintendent of public instruction. Also, start with that person at the top, or who is every state has a state education board. Find out who the chair of the education board is. Because they can also set some of those standards by policy. And the other thing we could do as an organization, we could come up with a standard draft wording of what a change to state law would be to push the issue of letting recruiters have access. I don't get the recruiters so much telling me, that they've been told no to get on the campus. It's a matter of, do they get in at the right time? And then the other piece is, so they can set up during lunchtime and be there and get the crowds, but can they get into the classrooms? That's a little bit harder pull. Teachers tend to be a little bit when I say possessive of the class time in that. But I've always figured out somewhere to work it in, so I could have a guest speaker in, have that guest speaker be a recruiter. And you can ask the recruiters, can you speak to this period of history, or can you speak to something? What was the Navy's role in this? What did sea power represent? What is sea power today? Why is it important? And that gives the kids something to talk about. I mean, anytime I bring a speaker into the classroom, the students also have a writing assignment for the next day. They have to recap for me what was one point that the speaker made. Was that a point you agreed with? If it is or you're not, why didn't you like it? And then do you have any questions as a result of hearing the speaker? We as teachers always want to say, you just want to sit there and play a video. The video has to have something to cause the student to interact with it, so you have to ask them questions. So even if we helped out with having those suggestions in there, and it goes into state curriculum, and that forces the issue.
Yeah, John, to your point, one of the things that we're doing, again, as the Association of the United States Navy, we set up community partnerships with local governing agencies, all right? Well, we set up a program here in New Jersey that we're going to move forward on, hopefully in April or May, where we're going to have a Navy model building contest. We're going to have kids throughout the whole community build model ships, model carriers, model subs, naval aviation, all types of models. And they're going to put them on display. And at that point in time, we're going to share with these young people and their parents the history of the Navy and how great this Navy has been in preserving our freedom and liberty, not only here in America, but worldwide. So to your point, it starts the conversation, and each kid's going to get a certificate. They're going to get a good lunch on us, and it's part of our program to attract people to the Navy. These can be high school students, probably even the upper middle school student. And we're going to see how that goes. It's going to be a pilot program, but to your point of starting the conversation and planting the seed, having recruiters come, which we will, and hopefully that'll be at least a step forward in renewing our partnership with the Navy, the People's Partnership.
Absolutely. And it's got to be there. I've had the pleasure or the privilege over the years that when I've met some others that I remember I was on a plane flight across the country one day, and the guy sitting next to me was an E9 Master Gunnery Sergeant Marine Corps, was with their National Recruiting Office. So I just had a casual conversation. I said, how do you achieve your recruiting goals? And he told me, he says, with the Marines, he says it's a family tradition. It's the dad or the uncle or the aunt who served in the Marine Corps. He says, or it's the guy next door, the friendly neighbor next door, Marines. He says, we get most of our recruits because it's either family or someone the family is close to who's been in the Marine Corps, and that's why they want to join. That is a great recruiting program. It gets a lot in the door there. Until we can spread that culture, then we take a learning moment from our friends in the Marine Corps, how they've been stabbing, because the Marines is not an easy outfit to get to be in. I don't think I've known Marines. I've had one in the family.
My son's a Marine. He fought in Iraq. So interesting thing, when I went down to boot camp when he graduated over there from Paris Island, first thing he said to me, he saluted me, and I was in uniform, and he says, "Dad, I've learned something very significant of being a Marine." I go, "What's that, son?" He said, "Well, you and I are both in the same department, Department of Defense, but I'm in the men's department." So I said, "Well, thanks a lot, son. You learned a lot."
The other part is, when recruiting, that some people have said, well, Navy, military is not equal opportunity, or it is, or it's just. And I like to tell my students my introduction. I said my first commanding officer in the United States Navy was a woman. My last commanding officer in the United States Navy was a woman, 2-star admiral, and she got paid the same as every other 2-star. And I said, you find me another program that is that equal. And I said, so it's fairness, it's open, to achievements, regardless of who you are. And there's also the experience, and students have asked me, said, well, did you go anywhere in the Navy? I said, listen, I have gone places with the United States Navy that no sane person would ever buy a plane ticket to go to.
Yeah. So
And
true.
I said, I've learned something on every adventure I've been on. I have had the privilege and opportunity to work with someone else's Navy and their military. The international language is broken English. We're on the same planet. And there's cultural opportunities for growth, everything else. If you make it a career, great. If you're only staying for an enlistment, the other example I like to use is that about a year ago, I had to call a plumber for something, and plumber comes out from the plumbing company, notices my veteran's license plate, says, "Oh, you're in the military." I said, "Yeah, I'm a retired senior chief." He says, "Oh, says I did two hitches in the Navy," and he says, "I used my GI Bill. I went to a trades program." I said, "I got my plumber certifications and that," and I said, "Well," I said, "How good is the plumbing business these days?" And he's working for a company. He says, "I made $120,000 last year." He said the reason he was a hull technician. Hull technicians, as we know on a ship, if the
Wow.
plumbing gets messed up, the HT is there to save you. And look what and this guy is still bragging about. Says, had it not been for being an HT, I wouldn't be making the money I'm making
There
today.
you go. Well, that's great. John, would you believe time has passed by?
I
Now
can
look
believe
it.
it.
I'm going to put you on a spot here. All right. In fact, I have a habit of putting people on the spot. I want to have you back. All right. I really do.
I'll
I
do
mean,
that.
you gave me an education. I'm sure our viewers had education. Secondly, as I shared with you, we're going to be starting what we call the AUSN Leadership and Management Institute, and I'd like to talk to you further about that moving forward. You're a great asset, man. I'll tell you, I wish I met you sooner. You're a good American,
Well,
and boy, you really drive it home. So, any last words to our members before we leave? And then, of course, we're going to invite you back.
well, go Navy, beat Army.
Yeah, all right. Well, listen, I thank you. Thank you very much. And oh, what did you retire as? What rank?
I'm a senior chief.
Senior chief.
Senior chief intelligence specialist. I had a tour as a command senior chief and a senior enlisted advisor. So I've had a good time.
Well, senior chief, I've learned one thing about being an officer. If you don't have a good chief, you're not going to make it as an officer. So I thank you for being a senior chief. And, I share this with everyone. You're an officer everywhere you go, everybody's saluting you. But here's my chance to salute you. And I thank you very much for your time and for your commitment
Roger that.
and your friendship. So we'll see you again. All right. So, folks, there he is,
Roger
Jon
that.
Altmann. God bless you. God bless America. And until next time, I'm Lieutenant Commander retired Stephen Rogers, the Executive Director of the Association of the United States Navy. I got a
There you go.
landscaper upstairs, and I just got distracted. And you see what happens when you do these, broadcasts. So thanks again, John. God bless you.
Roger that.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.